Okay. So here's your official welcome back. We're going to talk about movement and stillness today. So exercise, our postures, and some the practice of meditation. When we're talking about movement, and we'll spend most of our time talking about movement and exercise. When we're thinking about movement, I want to move away from the general common mindset of thinking of exercise as weight loss and physique, and thinking of it in a more functional kind of way, right? What do I actually want to be able to do? What do I want my body to be capable of? Do I want to get up easily from a cross-legged position off the floor when I'm 60 years old or when I'm 80 years old, right? Do I have a sport or a hobby that I really enjoy? Do I really enjoy golfing or skiing or tennis? And do I want to be able to do that when I'm older? Or do I want to be able to keep up with my grandkids and not feel puffed? Or even now, do I want to be able to carry my bags of groceries up the stairs or up the 3 flights to my apartment, or whatever your situation is, without straining my shoulders, hurting my wrists? Okay, so think of it in terms of function, and then the weight loss and the physique, that's a side effect. But when you're really thinking of what you want to be able to actually perform and do, that's the true motivation. That's what's going to carry you through whatever program that you're doing. Okay, and of course, there's many other health benefits to movement other than weight loss that you can also focus on when you're planning your exercise regime or your program. Okay, movement is information to your nervous system. Okay, exercise specifically is a small stressor or a great stressor, depending on what form of exercise you're doing. But that's okay, because you need a little bit of stress to make change. There's the concept of hormesis, right? You need a certain amount of stress to be able to perform. There's the deadline is there so that you actually accomplish whatever you need to do by the deadline, right? It's a good amount of stress. Even stressing out your body a little bit. When you're lifting weights, you're tearing micro tears in your muscles, but then your body heals it and makes them stronger, right? But then there's something where you extend and there's too much stress, or there's too much accumulated stress, and then that has a negative effect on the body, right? So if we think, when we're choosing the right kind of exercise for our own state of being, and that's going to differ for each and every individual, but it's also going to differ for you depending on where you are in your stage of life and where you are in terms of your own mental health, right? So if we think of ourselves as carrying around a little bucket of stress, and that bucket has a capacity, right? That bucket's being filled up by various things: work stress, financial stress, lack of sleep, poor nourishment, inflammatory diets, and slowly that bucket's filling up. Adding a small stressor of exercise, we'll talk about how that helps with stress management, but if your bucket is already very full to the brim and you're feeling the most stressed out you've ever felt, maybe that's a time to not add in that high dose of really intense exercise like CrossFit, and maybe do more of a restorative exercise. Okay, and so I'm giving you broad terms now, and we'll talk more about it in detail as we go on. But the idea really is that you have to choose the right kind of movement, because some movements are restorative and some of them are stressors. Both of them are good, but you choose which one you do depending on your state of being, and then you choose the right dose. Okay, there is a difference between running on the pavement for an hour versus doing a 10-minute HIIT session or a 20-minute yoga session, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about how that affects your body in different ways. But the key really is to keep moving no matter what, because there's so many different options of how to move that can be beneficial to you no matter what you're experiencing, okay? And exercise at the right dose sends messages to your brain that you're thriving. It helps you with stress management because you're actually training your nervous system. You're training your nervous system to go into a state of stress and then come out of it at the end of your exercise, right? When you're doing a high intensity workout or a steady state cardio, you're putting stress on your body. You're activating your sympathetic nervous system. Your body's like, okay, we're running. We must be running away from something. Activate the sympathetic nervous system, right? The fight or flight symptom. And then if you are mindfully coming out of that exercise, then your body's like, okay, emergency is over. Let's calm down. Releases endorphins, which help you feel good, and releases more GABA. GABA is the hormone in your brain that dampens down anxiety. And your body gets out of that stress state. So you've trained your body to become stressed and come out of stress. So next time you're stressed in a less physical situation where you're stressed with work, for example, your body is actually, your nervous system is primed to know how to come out of that stress state faster. And the more you practice this, the more you train your nervous system, the quicker your body will be able to recognize stress and then come out of stress. Does that make sense? So you're physically training your body, but that practice cues your nervous system, and that sort of practice of coming in and out of stress will encompass all areas of your life, not just the physical areas of stress. Okay. It also, exercise in general releases more BDNF. That's the hormone in your brain that helps your brain cells grow. Okay. And so and especially in your hippocampus. And they've noticed that people with low levels of BDNF have higher risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Okay. So this is another reason that general exercise, general movement, no matter what you choose to do, is good for your mental and your brain health. Another thing is you have all of the DNA in every single one of your cells is wound up into little chromosomes. Each of those chromosomes, kind of like a shoelace, has a little cap on it called a telomere, and that protects your DNA. So you have oxidants, you have stress on the body, you have illness, whatever, attacks the telomeres, those little caps, but it doesn't get to the core of your DNA, the stuff where like it really matters if that's damaged. Exercise helps grow those caps so that you have more of a buffer area. Okay, so I hope you're convinced that daily movement at this point is something that you might want to incorporate into your lifestyle. So I'll first talk about a few exercises that everyone should do. And the first one is taking steps, walking, okay? The idea of this whole 10,000 steps a day is quite arbitrary, but it makes sense because if you are moving for about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of every hour, then you're more likely than not going to be getting about 8,000 steps to 10,000 steps a day. Okay, if you're taking the flight of stairs instead of the lift, if you're parking your car further away from the shop and walking to the shop, those are all ways you accumulate your 10,000, 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. And the key is that it's not one huge burst of activity, it's movement throughout the day. There's the idea of a sedentary lifestyle and an active lifestyle. Those are different, okay? Sedentary, you could be sat at your desk all day for 8 hours and then go and run on the treadmill for an hour. You still have a sedentary lifestyle with a burst of activity. The goal is to have a non-sedentary lifestyle where you're moving throughout the day. And of course, in the workplace, there's ways to do that. And Michael, we've talked about that in your workplace of instead of calling up your colleague, you walk to their office to talk to them. You use your lunch hour for a walk. There's different ways to incorporate that into the corporate world. But in general, you can figure that out for yourself. It's quite intuitive. You know, walking is like breathing and like your heart beating. You don't really have to think about it. You just have to do it more. And improve mental health. People report feeling better just by walking about 8,000, 10,000 steps a day, lower risk of dementia, lower risk of high blood pressure, strokes, heart attacks, and diabetes. So everyone should be walking. Get a Fitbit or whatever, like one of those pedometers. Start tracking your walking. Set the buzzers, those really annoying buzzers where you sit down and you think you've only sat down for 5 minutes and it buzzes at you that you haven't moved in an hour. Set them, turn them on and listen to them. It'll really help. The next exercise or movement that everyone should be doing is strength training. Okay, and there's different types of strength training. There's the kind of strength training that's the very traditional thought of, I'm going to work out my biceps, the muscle group focused strength training, right? And you lift your dumbbells or you lift your weights, and then, okay, leg day or abs, and very muscle focused. And then there's a second type of strength training that I would suggest is a little bit more useful, is functional and movement focused strength training. So I want to get out of the squat position with ease, or I want to be able to do full press ups, right? Or I want to be able to, just these compound movements. So you're not just focusing on one muscle group at a time, but you're using your whole core, you're using your legs and your arms at the same time to perform a certain movement. I want to perfect my golf stroke or whatever. Then you're working your core, you're working your delts and your legs at the same time, if that makes sense. These movement-based strength training, one is less risk of injury, and two, it is more focused on posture and avoiding like joint degeneration. And then the third thing about these movement-based strength training programs is that because they're compound movements where you're working multiple muscle groups at the same time, they burn more fat, okay? So it does help your physique actually a lot more quickly. There's also the other categories of strength training where you're not necessarily lifting weights, but it's body weight exercises. So that's the Pilates, the Vinyasa yogas, okay? So those are types of strength trainings as well. Michael, the push-ups that you did on the table this morning, that's strength training, okay? And it's beneficial for everyone, regardless of age or gender, right? It improves your body composition, of course, but you have reduced risk of sarcopenia. That's the natural loss of muscle mass as you get older. By the time you're 35, your body is naturally losing muscle mass if you're not using it, okay? And that reduces your risk of falls. Falls is one of the leading mortality risks for the elder population, okay? You fall and break your hip, you might end up in the hospital for a long time if you're 80 years old or older, okay? Bump your head. And so falls, a simple fall that you kids do 5 or 6 times a day when you're older has a detrimental effect. And so if you can start now and prevent that, it's great. Helps with joint and back support, okay? Your joints, the strength of your joints depend on the muscles that support the joint. Improves with bone density. This is especially for women 40 years and older, to avoid osteoporosis. Reverses aging with the telomeres I told you about, hormonal balancing, better insulin sensitivity. Your muscle tissue is where most of your insulin receptors are. So if you have more muscle tissue, then you have more sensitivity to insulin. And so you can tolerate higher levels of sugar. Not that I'm saying like gorge on candy, but you have less of those blood sugar spikes and dips throughout the day and less of a chance of diabetes. Okay, again, cardiovascular health, reduced anxiety. Strength training is one of the exercises that really increases your GABA, your anxiety dampening hormone. And then of course, people that have done strength training throughout their lives have a lower risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. mobility, this is the third form of exercise that everyone should be doing. It's not an everyday thing, but it's definitely something to be incorporating into your practice. And what is mobility? It's not just flexibility. It's flexibility plus strength. It's about end range strengthening. This is where you are doing most of the work of protecting your joints and protecting your posture. Okay, what is end range? Where are we? Sorry. So end range strengthening is where you move your joint to its full extension. So I'm using my arm, but this isn't really a good example. But you extend your joint to its full flexibility, right? And then you strengthen it there, okay? Because normally at the end range, that happens in real life, where you're bending over to pick up a heavy pot in the garden, or you're picking up your child. You're moving all the way to your full flexibility, your full range of motion. But if the strength isn't there to pull you out of it, to recruit the muscles, that's when you're depending on your joints to do that for you. And that's when you're injuring your joints or you're injuring your back. Okay, so when you're choosing your mobility program, you focus, and there's a lot of new trainers coming out with more and more mobility programs because of this importance of preventing injury and really strengthening the movements. Okay, another example is if, for example, in kickboxing, they're like, okay, I can do a high kick, right? So I must be good. I'm really flexible. I can move my leg all the way up to my head, right? But if the strength isn't there at that full range of motion, you're actually not going to be able to have any force in that kick. You're going to fall over if your leg hits anything, or you're not going to be able to control that movement of your leg back down. And that puts a lot of stress on your hips and your lower back. Okay. So mobility is something to absolutely pay attention to, especially if you are doing the strength training regularly. Okay, improves your flexibility without compromising stability and strength. Anytime you increase strength, you're losing flexibility. You're losing range of motion, right? So if you are really working out your quads, you're losing that ability to actually bend over and sit down in a chair unless you're working on your mobility. And then you increase your flexibility. But if you're only working on flexibility, only doing yoga, for example, then you're losing strength, right? You're getting more flexible, but you actually don't have the strength to pull out of those postures. So again, that's why both are absolutely necessary, okay? Helps with injuries, less falls with aging, improved movement, and again, back pain, okay? A lot of our, do I want to go into this detail? I don't. I will talk to you about it later if we're going to go into that detail. Okay, the next set of exercises, this is where you choose what's right for you depending on where you're at in your life, okay? Have you guys heard of high intensity interval training? It's like the super trendy thing to do. Nod yes or not, shake your heads no's, okay? Versus steady state cardio. The difference is true high intensity interval training is you're working very, very, very hard for about 20 seconds. If you're working as hard as you should be for high intensity interval training, you wouldn't be able to do it for more than 20 seconds, right? You're hitting about 85 to 90% of your maximum heart rate, okay? You do it for 20 seconds, you're totally puffed, you're totally exhausted, your body's like, what is going on? Totally stressed out, and then you rest and recover, and the recovery depends on how long you need. It can be from 2 minutes, sometimes up to 5 minutes, and then you repeat the cycle. And the thing about HIIT that's really enticing is that you can basically get what you would get in a 1 hour steady state cardio workout in about 10 minutes, right? And usually HIIT workouts are like no longer than 20 minutes. You get the biggest bang for your buck. It really helps with boosting testosterone, balancing your hormones, increasing energy, burning fat. And it's like the perfect thing for our mindset these days, where it's like, give me the quickest thing with the quickest results. However, it really puts a lot of stress on the body. People that come to me totally burnt out, chronic fatigue syndrome, feel like they're absolute rubbish, their adrenals are shot, is because they're doing HIIT more than 2 times a week. They're doing it almost like 3 or 4 times a week. And that just burns you out completely. Or they already have tons of stressors in their life. They're not sleeping well, they're not eating well, or they're not eating enough. And then they come and they're doing HIIT on top of that. That's already filled up their stress bucket and it's overflowing. Okay. So maybe when you're feeling more stress, when you're feeling overwhelmed, that's when you step back and you're like, maybe I do maybe 1 HIIT exercise a week, or maybe I step away from the HIIT and do more steady state cardio. Or maybe I just focus on my strength training and my mobility exercises until this stressor passes. Okay, and this is where you really have to cue into your body when you're deciding on what kind of exercises that you want to be doing. Okay, if you do want to engage, and then most exercises these days aren't true HIIT, like the CrossFit or the AMRAP and all this stuff where they call it HIIT, but you're actually moving for about 30 seconds to a minute and then taking a 30-second break and then another 45 seconds and another like 30 seconds. That's actually moderate intensity. Okay, it still stresses out the body, but not as hard as HIIT, and it's still hugely important to take time after that exercise to bring down the nervous system and calm the nervous system down. Okay, and ask yourself these 2 questions before you're about to engage in any sort of moderate intensity or high intensity workout. Is 1, am I moving correctly? Never engage in CrossFit or HIIT if this is the first thing that you're doing in years. You have to make sure you have the right postures and you have the right strength and the right mobility to get you through it. Okay, or else you're coming to the physio, the doctor, or whatever with an injury. You've trashed your whole fitness plan because you've injured yourself within the first week. Okay, so strengthen the muscles, improve your mobility, and then engage in the high intensity workouts. Okay. Steady state cardio, the difference is you're only reaching about 40 to 50% of your maximum heart rate. So you're not pounding the pavement for an hour because that's just going to push you into an overstressed mode as well. You're still able to talk through your steady state cardio, and that's when you're burning the most fat, and that's when it's doing the most benefit for your body. Okay, benefits of HIIT, again, efficient, more fat loss, visceral fat loss, so the fat that's around your liver, around your organs, increased BDNF, again, increased mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of your cells. So increasing mitochondria, increasing its function if you're doing it correctly and giving yourself recovery time. Okay. And again, improved insulin resistance. So how do you know what exercise to do? It requires what we talked about the first week, checking in with your body, doing a body scan. How am I feeling? When I wake up in the morning, do I actually want to jump out of bed and get on with my day, or am I feeling tired? What are my hair and nails looking at? Are my nails breaking? Is my hair falling out? Maybe that's a sign that your body is stressed out. Okay. So you really have to focus on how your body is feeling, check in with your body, and then do the right exercise afterwards. Heart rate variability is another way to check in with your body. It's really fun, but not everyone has access to it. But the thought is your heart rate, your heartbeats aren't actually super, I'm sorry, my daughter's home and really loud, so I'm distracted by her voice. But your heart rate isn't on a steady beat. It actually changes in between each beat, the amount of time in between each beat. And the more variability there is, the healthier you are, because that's your body saying that I can deal with a little bit more stress. I can deal with relaxation. I'm fluidly moving out of these states. Okay. When you're more stressed out, your heart rate variability goes down, and you notice that every beat is exactly the same number of milliseconds apart. Okay. There's heart rate monitors and everything that do this for you. It's something that we do in our clinic. But again, you don't need that. It's just an extra tool if you are there and if you're very keen on exercising and monitoring your stress levels. Okay? The overall message here is that when in harmony with the rest of your lifestyle, your exercise, your movement can build stress resilience, and it can help you move in and out of the stress state more fluidly. And of course, there's forest bathing. So that's doing some sort of exercise for 20 minutes outside, at least once a week. And lower blood pressure, lower reports of anxiety, stress, depression, improves your immune system. Like literally they measure your immune cells and they find that you have a higher defense against pathogens, better sleep, better memory, better concentration. Okay, so it's the old Japanese lifestyle of Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing. So just taking time. And this is literally going in nature and experiencing nature. Put away your phones and don't take pictures of all the beautiful trees. Just really just breathe it in, bathe in it, and you'll see these benefits in your life. Okay. My recommended resources online. Again, I'm not affiliated with any of these people. This is just through my own experience here. If you want the complete thing with strength training, cardio training, forest bathing, mobility, and meditation, I would recommend Shona Virtue. Okay? She has it all in her programs. And every single 30-minute session with her incorporates the meditation and incorporates the mindfulness, the mobility, and the strengthening. Okay? She has different programs online that you can do, or you can just look her up on the YouTubes. But she has a Virtue Method fitness program. That's a 12-week program. She has Virtue Method for Life, which is for the older population. And then she has her own specific mobility program. But her actual fitness programs, it still include mobility. This is just an add-on program, okay? If you have some sort of qualm about a female trainer, try Luke Worthington. He does a lot of mobility and form cues, so correct postures for your exercises. So if you are keen on the HIIT and the AMRAP and the CrossFit and all, make sure you're doing his form cues or mobility programs, because that will make sure that you're getting the most effective exercise and the least risk for injury. There's Gary Ward, who focuses on, again, correct form. So look him up. They go through various common exercises that people do incorrectly, and they correct it with specific cues that are very intuitive to the body. Of course, there's also your local PTs and trainers. Rush Fitness is great. They have an online program too. I think they're opening up their gym today again, and their gym is, I'm very picky about cleanliness. Their gym is immaculately clean. So there's not a lot to worry about there. They're good. They do a lot of the strength training in gym. At home, they do more of a boot camp style thing. If you're doing something like that, you definitely have to be mindful about adding on the meditative practice and the mobility practice, okay? And making sure they're good. Rush Fitness is good because they give you different levels of things. Don't try to do the hardest thing first, because you'll injure yourself and not be able to do it anymore. Do a stepwise progressive load, okay? I don't think we have much time to talk about stillness, but again, at the end of every exercise session, whatever it is, make sure you take time to breathe. Just give yourself maybe 4 or 5 minutes at the end of every session to just lay down on your back or sit on a chair and take some deep breaths in and out. Breathe. Your breath is what hacks into your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is the what automatically happens in your body, your heart rate, your breathing rate, right? It's what either is in the sympathetic mode or fight and flight, or the parasympathetic mode of rest and digest. Most of the things you can't consciously control, like your heart rate or the way your blood is flowing to your muscles versus your gut, but you can control your breath. You slow down your breath for either inhale for 3, hold for 4, breathe out for 5, right? And you've immediately hacked into your autonomic nervous system, and you're telling it, I'm breathing deep, I'm breathing slow, obviously, I'm not in a state of emergency. And your body and your nervous system responds and catches up. Oftentimes we're hunched over our computers. We might not even be stressed, but we're taking short, shallow breaths quickly. That's sending messages to your brain that we're breathing fast, maybe we're stressed out, and you feel more stressed out in your head. Pull down the shoulders, relieve the tension, deep breaths in and out, belly breathing, and you're sending cues to your brain that you're calm, even if you're not. Okay, recommended resources for meditation and breathing. These are apps: Insight Timer, Calm, Headspace. You can use your own music. You can use your own creative practice. You can even use movement as meditation through being in nature and being unplugged from your phone. Take time now at the end of this session to set yourself one smart action step for this week. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Here's mine. I've been back on the Shona Virtue program for the past 6 weeks. It's been great, but I haven't done this aspect of her program yet, which is the outdoor Shinrin Yoku time. So here's mine for the week. I will spend 20 minutes every Saturday outside without my phone for the next 4 weeks. So it's specific, not specific enough. Actually, I could be like where outside and what time of the day on Saturday I'll do it. But it's specific, measurable, and time-bound.